Christine, we are impatient to hear you.
So yes, for this last presentation of the day, we stay in India, but we will look through a different industry, but indeed, which is bringing many link and echo to many aspects that we've discussed today. I will try to really highlight this in this presentation. So this presentation is entitled Digital Platform Weaving into Local Craft Industry Learnings from India. It is a research that was started as part of a larger project that we initiated in 2017 with Philippe BOUQUILLION, a research funded by LabSIC titled Cultural Industries in India, Digital Platforms and Regulation. And in this research program, we more specifically studied socioeconomic transformation related to the arrival of players from communication industry who have been across sector acquiring dominant position in the cultural industry in India over historical player. Among other aspects, we've been particularly analyzing the emergence of powership, power relations between legacy player in the cultural industry and communication players. We've been also looking at reconfiguration of cultural production, reconfiguration of labor or policy regulation. And as we saw in the previous presentation of Philippe, we studied different cultural sector, music, audiovisual, and craft is actually the last one that we've been looking at. This sector is particularly interesting for several reasons, but I think also because it emphasizes that a type of cultural production where there is still a strong material dimension, and conversely, maybe to music or film, it cannot dematerialize as easily and then ask a certain number of different questions. It is also a sector of activity which is really anchored into specific territories and community with local skills and knowledge. So to start this exploratory research on the transformation of craft sector with the deployment of platform, but especially e-commerce platform, we've been asking two broad sets of questions. The first one was on the transformation of the sector itself. Who are the different digital and communication players investing into craft? Is it global players such as the GAFAM, Indian national entrepreneurs, or local entrepreneurs? What are the transformation in the process of design, production, distribution, and is there a formalization of the economy in a largely unorganized and cash-oriented sector? Another set of questions was rather looking at the digital transformation of the society through several aspects. One of them was to question the implication of the increasing presence of global private communication players as privileged partner of the government of India in the development and implementation of digital program toward especially small and medium enterprises such as Craft One. And this situation invites to question a logic of privatization of the management of local cultural resources as well. A second aspect was, of course, to look at the logic of dependency, technological, economical, for the cultural players toward digital players. And a last aspect was also to question the increasing role of data, to think and organize the development of culture, make policy formulation and resource planning. So to start to discuss those aspects, we've been looking at one precise case study and did an exploratory fieldwork in the state of Assam in Northeast India. A fieldwork we conducted in February 2020 with our Indian colleague that was associated to the Center for Internet and Society, Monish Singh. So these are the results from the preliminary research that we started to conduct collectively on this topic. And I will be focusing on three different points: the evolution in the deployment of the digital platforms in the sector, the difficulty related to their localization strategy, and different reflection regarding the reconfiguration of artisans' work. One of the objectives is also to discuss to what extent the different digital players are capitalizing on local cultural resources and workers still poorly integrated into global circuits. And our methodology, just to give a few precision, emphasize ethnographic approach with direct observation and semi-structured interviews with the different players of the sector, but also it is combined with a political economy of communication approach to enable to reflect on the political, economical, and industrial logics which have been governing the deployment of digital platform at the local scale. So the state of Assam was particularly interesting for this study. First of all, it has a very rich craft production covering a diversity of material from cane, bamboo, metal, weaving and handloom, and this last one represents 1/3 of the production in the country. So a state where craft represents not only an important source of employment, but also of revenue. But we must notice that until recently, most craft community had limited access to smartphone, digital infrastructure and services. And so when it was starting to spread largely, not only in the main city of Assam, but also more in its rural region, there were lots of expectation on the current deployment of digital technology to improve economy and livelihood. It's also a state that has been actively implemented Digital India national program, a program that was launched by the government in 2014 to transform India, I'm quoting the program, into a digitally empowered society and knowledge economy. And this program strongly paved the way for collaboration with IT partner offering IT solutions for all kinds of local issues. Despite being associated to a certain idea of margin, and especially geographical margin, as we can see on the map, this state was chosen as a pilot state by several GAFAM operators to experiment their digital program for craftsmen. And I will come back more specifically on Amazon and Facebook initiative. But also it had a certain number of smaller digital platforms launched by local entrepreneur, social entrepreneur from Assam, and with whom we had very interesting interviews as well. So in terms of looking at the deployment of those platforms in the state, what we can see is several steps. I will go quickly on those aspects, but just to give an idea of the evolution of those partnerships. First, we could see at the level of India, the multiplication of partnership between several ministries and Department of Culture from the central government with national and transnational players of communication industry toward several programs related to culture. One of them was the important partnership in 2012 with Google Art and Culture regarding large program of digitization of Indian culture, heritage, and online exhibition. There was also in 2014 a MOU, several MOU that started to be signed between Ministry of Textile and dozens of e-commerce platforms to, I'm quoting official report, to give a boost to the handloom industry in the country. And those partnerships were also developed not just between the transnational company or national company and the central state, but also with regional state. And it was the case in Assam. One of those first partnerships was in 2014-15 with MOU started again between an important local handicraft and handloom cooperation with several e-commerce platforms. But at this time, probably the spread of the infrastructure was not was different, and so the move was not so significant. 2017, the Northeast Craft Conclave was there to tie up and try to bring together leading online portals involved in marketing of craft product with local artisans, entrepreneurs, and government agencies. And it is also the same here that two important collaborations started, one with Facebook program Boost Your Business, where the government Chief Minister of Assam explained that the program aimed to complete the government offer to provide Assam's entrepreneurs, artisans, and craftsmen with global visibility that will ultimately help them to grow their business. And the other important program that was launched was the one of Amazon dedicated to craftsmen. So the e-commerce platform has started a special section and activity segment of its activity toward the craftsmen. The initial program was launched in 2016, but it decided to have specific pilot project in 5 clusters of India. And Assam had one of those specific clusters. Not only the strategy was built around national and regional partnership, but there was also the idea to train, educate, enable handloom weaver to sell their product online. So to that extent, I let you appreciate the quality of the image here for the campaign, Kalahat campaign. They organized a workshop with the artisans, tying up with so representative trainers, the representative of Amazon for those programs would be well-connected intermediaries with the local community, and those workshops would help to create account for those craftsmen, to make them more familiar with the platform, the registration, and of course to make a familiar face to a platform that remained quite abstract and immaterial. So if we look today at the landscape of those platforms, the first category would be the one that deal only with craft. And in this category, they are the ones that were developed by Indian entrepreneurs, mainly in Hyderabad and Bangalore, and by Indian engineer returning from the Silicon Valley, but associated with artisans specialists as well. Then there are, of course, the young generation of local entrepreneurs who, for some of them, had in their family, come from craftsman family and had particular relation with the craft industry. And of course, the transnational platform arrived on the top of this. And the business model of those platforms is very different, because for the first ones, their revenue only come from the sale and a percentage of the sale online. But for platforms like Facebook or Amazon, craft is just a joint product. It's an extremely minimal amount of the sale. The interest is not there, and there are several hypotheses toward why to invest massively something that is not bringing any money. But probably one aspect, and I will come back later on this, it's also because it's a very strong symbolic step, and they are self-promoting themselves as promoting made in India, small-scale artisans. And this is, so the symbolic function behind helping small artisans is strong. In reality, those handicrafts are put in competition also with similar products made in China, and take part in a process of putting clusters and territories into competitions. And what we can see also, of course, in this slides, it's a very different financial technological power, a huge database, of course, of a player like Amazon. Whereas the startup would have the advantage to be more anchored into local network, but would be definitely working on raising funding and increasingly funding from venture capitalist investment to be able to compete in this very busy now market. So I wanted to have the last part of this presentation focusing more on the element of difficulty in adapting the way platform work with the way craft work, and also with the process of reordering work process around the logic of the platform. So here I wanted to begin by saying that companies such as Amazon's, as we were not able to meet them in Assam, nor their representative. Actually, they didn't have one there that we could meet. But those reflections come from mainly discussions with other local platforms and with craftsmen, of course. So they explain that companies such as Amazon encounter difficulties in localizing their activities because their operating modalities are not really adapted to the way the craft industry work locally. And among those aspects, one of them is, for instance, the standardization of product. Every item is a bit different. The difference between the photography and the object that come from the production may be different and may create unsatisfaction for the customer, request to return. So difficulties with standardization of product was one aspect. The other one was you may connect the craftsmen with international buyers or even with different kind of buyers. But if it's a small commission, it may be very difficult for the craftsmen to produce it. Usually it's by hundreds of commission that they work. As you can see here in this picture, they are producing 100 of those trays, and there is a precise division of labor. So you cannot make one product at the time, for instance. It doesn't, it's difficult to work this way. And also difficulty with the supply and meeting the delivery deadline. When you live in a rural part of Assam, the time you have a transportation to the main warehouse of Amazon, which is near Guwahati, etc., it's complicated to meet a precise timeline. Big platforms also do not want to bear the risk that historic business or intermediary were bearing. By this, I mean that the usual way that the commission work is that the craftsman will receive a commission of, let's say, 100 tray. So they will receive the money from the intermediary to buy the material, make the product, pay the workers, and they don't have to take care about where to stock the product, whom to sell it to, or how many are left. So the whole process is handled by a third person, an intermediary, or if they deposit their full production to an emporium, again, they don't have to handle the delivery or the inventory, which is precisely what happened when you work with such platform as Amazon. It's an aggregator between buyer and seller. It doesn't really own the good itself. And so they are not buying in advance the product. The worker do not get the money in advance to product its object. And so in this case, the craftsmen find themselves taking the risk in the place of the new intermediary, the new gatekeeper, which is the platform. On the reordering of the work process, as Vasily was also emphasizing, the statue of self-entrepreneur is strongly promoted by the platform in craft as well. We see multiplication of tasks, which are non-cultural tasks. The craftsmen start to do brand design, photography, client relation management, digital marketing, even if it want to start to promote its product on the platform. So there is an injunction to multitasking in the market if also they want to remain competitive. We observe also a tension with this idea of online, offline, at several levels. One of them is that accessing an international market doesn't mean necessarily to automatically get more revenue or making a living from this activity. It can come from, for the small commission I was, for instance, mentioning, you can have lots of international clients, but if it's very small commission, it doesn't really work economically. So from the very first interview we had, the observation was that offline marketplace were still essential part of the share in the revenues. This may of course evolve, but this were the first observation. COVID situation changed a little bit things. We can of course discuss it in the conversation after. Issue related to protection of IP, especially when we are talking about original design from particular community with particular significance. The whole idea of platform also that often unable to bypass traditional intermediary. We try to question this aspect. And what we observe is that in a context where very few craftsmen still have access to smartphone, there is also the question of digital literacy, the question of handling platform in English. Then the main person who appropriate the technology would be rather the middlemen or the intermediaries, and they will be using the e-commerce platform to reach new markets. international client or national client that may result for more commission for the craftsman. But in the end, this idea of bypassing the traditional intermediary is not that evident and would need further research. And I will finish with pointing out one tendency and something that we would like to further explore in our future project in this region. The first is then rather than a direct competition between all the platforms that we could see on the slide, we observe rather a process of integration of the smaller platform and the new craft seller into larger e-commerce platform. The financial and technological power of the biggest tech companies give them a unique opportunity to absorb more market share there. And I would like, of course, to study a little bit more the stakes of the different GAFAM player into the smaller one, especially because I could recently see how players like Microsoft and Amazon were massively investing in Northeast innovation startup. And so how there is really an interest to also already collaborate and work with small innovative startup where they can be then bigger perspective. But the last aspect is that under the process of the project of empowering and connecting artisans to the world economy, I think we cannot help seeing how those platforms are also a strategy to capitalize on connected territory to a global market, how there is a process of sweating the asset of those territories. And the second aspect is that we can also assume that there is a strategy to position themselves on emerging market, recently connected territories and population, where there is high possibility to, even if there is not economic return on the sale of those products, the idea is rather to collect new data on consumer that can be monetized. And we go back to the question of how to evaluate the process of monetization from those data also. But so I think beyond craft, and again, you can see a beautiful advertising picture from Amazon Galahad. I think beyond the idea of the craft sector, it is, I think, an example of how small and medium enterprises are becoming the next big market segment of India also to invest in with a need, a sector that need and that are pushed to digitization, and on which there is increasing competition between digital services operator to be the first mover on this segment, because it opened also many other type of operation and interoperationality. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine. The last but not the least. Fascinating presentation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
For
that was
all of you online who stayed
really
until the end.
wonderful.